I'm James Rosone.
And I'm Miranda Watson. We're the husband and wife writing team that created the military thriller Monroe Doctrine series and the military sci-fi series The Rise of the Republic.
We have some additional content we'd like to share with you guys today, and we hope you'll find it informative and entertaining. We're planning to create more videos similar to this in the future.
As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get started.
Chapter 47. Things Start Moving. 15th of December, 1990. Oman. With the final course of action accepted and approved, positioning the forces could now commence. The first problem was a traffic management plan to reduce confusion as to where units were and where they needed to move to in order to stage for the upcoming offensive. Fortunately, elements of the 7th Corps had their ships diverted from Muscat to Salalah, and their personnel were flowing into the international airport in Salalah. As soon as planes landed, the soldiers were moved out of the area to staging areas outside of town that the Omani government had erected for them. Tent City, as it would be known, was the most luxury these soldiers would see for some time to come. "Sir, I tell you this is going to be a nightmare. We have 4 divisions to move some 400 miles north, and only one major highway and one other paved road to do it. In a lot of areas, our vehicles can get off the roads and travel overland, but it's still going to take a toll on the vehicles," Brigadier General Holt, the 7th Corps G4, said, addressing General Franks. "Well, we need to push out some MPs and the 2nd ACR to recon some routes that we could use. Get with the G3 and get a tasking order out to the 2nd ACR. The sooner them boys find us a route and mark it, the quicker we can start pushing people out, starting with those National Guard truck stop units along the routes. Those guys are incredible. Truck pulls in, and the driver gets out, gets a shower and a hot meal. Depending on his hours driving, he gets a cot and some sleep. While he's doing that, they run his truck through an inspection to refuel and repair anything that needs to be repaired." "Whoever dreamed this one up deserves a medal," Franks said. "How many of those units do we have, anyway?" "Sir, I believe we have 7 of those units in country right now, but I'm not sure," Holt admitted. "Well, we need a few more yesterday. See what you can do about it," Franks directed. "And I think we should have the maintenance units put out some road rangers as well." "Road rangers, sir?" Holt questioned. "Yeah, like you see on the interstate in the States. Maintenance trucks running the road to help stranded motorists. Create something like that here. Pick a maintenance battalion and assign that mission to them." "Yes, sir," Holt said, taking notes and making a reminder to get on the phone with CENTCOM. Out on Highway 31, convoys were almost bumper to bumper moving north. Huge HETs, or heavy equipment transporters, moved with M1 tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles loaded on their backs. Between them were 5,000-gallon fuel trucks, semi-trailers, both military and civilian, carrying all the essentials for war. Personnel were being flown north from the airport to an airstrip at Fahud, which would be in the rear of the core sector. Here they would connect with their respective vehicles. As the vehicles moved north, Specialist Berger was surprised to see so many U.S. Air Force personnel at the airbase at Thumrait, north of Salalah. U.S. and British jets were landing and taking off with thunderous roars from their engines. His assistant driver, Specialist Ford, had been taking a snooze but woke up to the sound of the jet engines. "Where the hell are we?" Ford asked, not yet awake and reaching for a warm bottled water. "We're about 40 miles out of Salalah and keeping along Highway 31. That's some airbase over there and a lot of activity. Looks like F-16s, but there are some in desert colors that I don't recognize." "See? There's one taking off now," Berger said, taking his eyes off the road and vehicle to the front. "Hey, pay attention to your driving. Last thing we need is to get into an accident and be stuck out in this god-forsaken desert," Ford said with some disgust in his voice. "What? Don't you think this is so cool being here?" Berger asked. "I think it's cool being in this operation, but not here. I joined to get the college money and always thought that if I did go into a combat situation, it would be someplace nice, like southern Italy or France, not this desert shithole. I wanted to meet foreign women and drink good wine. This place doesn't have either. They don't drink, and the women all have black bags over their heads. Who knows what they look like? No, this isn't what I signed up for. My grandfather was in Italy in World War II and told me how great it was to be driving a truck there. Not this shit, Ford said with disgust in his voice. As they continued along the route, an occasional truck was passed on the side of the road, undergoing some repairs. Roadside assistance crews from the various motor vehicle maintenance units had been formed and were being kept busy with vehicles that had broken down or run out of gas. Getting off the road was no problem, as the land was as flat as could be, and the sand was hard-packed and easily supported the weight of any and every vehicle. Off in the distance, they could see dust clouds where some vehicles were running on an alternate route across the desert laid out by the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Moving the entire 7th Corps in one direction would take too long on one road, so alternate routes were necessary to keep things moving in a timely manner. The first element to arrive by C-130 at the Fahud airport was an ALCE team, followed by heavy forklifts to unload pallets of everything. Major, once people start arriving, I'll have a team here to direct where they're to go to get into unit assembly areas. I hope that the vehicles will arrive first, before the troops start coming. Otherwise, they're going to have a hike, said Lieutenant Colonel Billings, the Corps Advance Party Commander. Sir, where do you want the pallets moved to? Because this place is going to be covered in pallets when the aircraft flow starts, Major Gaines said. She was becoming an old hand at commanding the ALCE team, and this was not her first experience with establishing an airfield. Let's put the ammo that comes in over there, on the northeast side of the airfield, and everything else on the northwest side. I'll have some supply people from the 213 Supply and Services Battalion over here in an hour to start organizing a reception area for the logistics, and have them get with you. Do you expect any of that to arrive in the next hour? No, sir. The first couple of loads coming in are my stuff to set up the airfield control party and our accommodations. Your first loads according to the plan won't arrive for another 3 hours at least. Once I establish comms with Salala, I can give you more accurate timelines for things arriving, and what those are. Our first load should be several heavy forklifts that will move stuff off the airfield once you get it out of the planes. I want to be sure we keep the ammo well away from the airfield, but we won't be able to haul it very far until I get some flatbed trucks in here to move it to a better location, Colonel Billings stated. Sir, there's an Air Force engineer element en route to here to help expand this airfield with a turnaround area, and maybe extend the runway. The C-130s can handle this runway but would like it a bit longer, Major Gaines informed him. As long as it doesn't cut down the flow, I have no problem with that. Should have been done days ago, but no one knew we'd be coming here. We'll just have to make do, Major, Billings said as he turned and went looking for someone from the 213 Supply and Service Battalion. Sir, the first of the launches are arriving and ready to start hauling us off this rock, Colonel Lohman said. The units have all received movement times for the over-the-beach operations, and there are MP units ready to clear the road all the way to Al-Husayfin on the border with the UAE. The launches will be taking us to just south of An-Nuqda, where the supply boats run out from. What route are they directing we take to move to Al-Husayfin? I don't want this to turn into a goat rope for our division, getting in a traffic jam with another division moving south or crossing paths, Major General Hopkins said. Sir, we're to take the E-32 highway north to where it intersects Highway 15 and stay on that until we hit the O1 highway, which goes right to our area. The MPs will be at each intersection, controlling traffic and clearing the way for us. Units shifting from up in that area are restricted to Highway 21 and Highway 31 coming south. That keeps the flows away from each other, Colonel Lohman stated. Okay, Colonel, put your money where your mouth is, General Hopkins said with a smile, digging in his pocket and pulling out a $1 bill. I'll bet $1 some Army strays wander over onto our road and foul up the works. Sir, I'll take you up on that. And if, just if, one of our units strays into the Army traffic, you owe me $1, Lohman said with an equally big smile. "Colonel, if one of our units strays onto the Army roads, you will get my dollar and the commander's balls for good measure," Hopkins said with a bigger smile. Captain Albishi sat at the outdoor cafe, the Firk restaurant, on the main intersection in Nizwa, into which highways 21, 31, and 15 all flowed. He had been seated for over 2 hours and silently noted and recorded the number and type of vehicles coming south on Highway 21 and continuing down Highway 31. None of this military traffic was moving north on Highway 15. Another member of his Special Forces team was doing the same in Sama, where Highway 21 intersected Highway 15. According to his phone reports, he was seeing military traffic moving north, and it was all U.S. Marines. As Captain Albishi sat peacefully sipping his coffee, he noted the Americans all had numbers on the bumpers of their vehicles. These numbers were very easy to read, and he had learned how to interpret them. On one side of the bumper was the unit designation, and on the other side, the vehicle number. He was thankful that they provided this information, as it made his job so much easier, allowing him to identify units that were moving. Some vehicles were painted a desert sand color, while others were painted green. He realized that the green vehicles were from the 7 Corps, and the others were from the United States. Interesting, he thought. As he sat concentrating on the military convoys passing his table, he didn't notice the 2 gentlemen seated a few tables from him, who were not interested in the convoys, but in him. A waiter approached Albishi. "Sir, can I bring you something to eat? You have been drinking coffee for the past 3 hours and your stomach must be feeling the caffeine. You will not be sleeping tonight," the waiter said. "Damn, it has been noticed," he thought. "Yes, please bring me a menu. I thought my wife would be here long before now, but she has been delayed. I would like to order," Albishi said, smiling up at the waiter, who bowed slightly and left to fetch a menu. As he did so, one of the men that had been watching this exchange got up and followed the waiter. "Excuse me," he said to the waiter once inside. "Yes, may I help you?" the waiter asked. His eyes widened when he saw what the gentleman had in his hand, holding it in front of the waiter's face. The Internal Security Service, or Jahaz al-Amn al-Dakhli credentials were seldom seen, and most people would be very happy never to see them. "How long has that gentleman been sitting there?" the agent asked. "Sir, he has been drinking coffee for 3 hours now, or close to it," the waiter answered. "How do you know that?" "Sir, I make most of my money on tips, so I like to see my tables turn over quickly. The longer he sits there, the more I lose in tips that others would be leaving me. Our rule is 1 hour, but he has been there for 3 and now he is about to order food. It will be another hour for sure," the waiter lamented. "Has he made any phone calls in those 3 hours?" "Yes, sir. He has made some and received some as well. I did not hear what was said, but I know he has been on the phone," the waiter answered as small beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. "Thank you, and say nothing of this. Here is something to make up for his time at your table. See me once he leaves. You can bring a menu to our table as well," the agent said as he stuffed a few bills in the waiter's hand. "Yes, sir. Very good, sir. I will be right with you," the excited waiter said. "Calm down. Just act like nothing has happened, and do not be looking at our table unless we wave to you. When you bring him his bill, you will bring ours as well, but just drop it on the table and keep moving. We will leave payment on the table under a plate. Do I make myself clear?" the agent asked. "Yes, sir. Very clear, and thank you," the waiter stammered. He would have an interesting tale to tell tonight at home. Chapter 48. Countermine Operations. 15th December 1990. Salalah, Oman. The USS Avenger was the most recent addition to the U.S. Navy minesweeper fleet. Commissioned in 1987, she resided in her home port of Naval Station, Charleston, South Carolina. Her crew of 6 officers and 75 enlisted sailors consisted mostly of the plank holders, crew that had been aboard when she was commissioned. She was not a big ship in terms of size, being only 220 feet long and 39 feet wide with a draft of 13 feet. Some luxury yachts were bigger, and she was not a fast ship, cruising at 14 knots. Built of Douglas fir timber coated with fiberglass, she was perfect for the job she had to perform, finding and destroying undersea mines. The last thing you wanted for that job was a metal ship that would set off a magnetic mine. The one drawback for the crew was that in rough weather, she bobbed like a cork on the sea. To prevent the minesweeper from making the long voyage to the Arabian Sea, the Avenger, along with USS Android, MSO 509, USS Imperious, MSO 449, and USS Leader, MSO 490, was loaded aboard the Dutch heavy lift ship Super Servant III and transported to the Gulf of Oman, where they were offloaded and entered service. To say the least, the crews appreciated this, as otherwise it would have probably been a long, seasick voyage. The USS Android, USS Imperious, and USS Leader were part of the U.S. Navy Reserve Fleet, with naval reservists manning the ships. The knock on his cabin door startled Commander Jim Keyes. He had been in command on the newest minesweeper of the fleet for a year now. He was a Navy ROTC graduate and was following in his father's career footsteps, although his father had been a Navy lawyer. Like many service brats, he liked the military lifestyle, which wasn't for everyone. Of course, it was rough on the married life, and Keyes had been divorced from his high school sweetheart. "Enter!" Keyes called out. The door opened, and his executive officer, Lieutenant Tony Jameson, entered. "What's up, Tony?" Keyes asked. Alone, they were pretty informal with each other. "Sir, you have a meeting with the squadron commander in 1 hour. He's sending his launch over to pick you up, as well as the skippers from the other ships. We might be finally getting the word on what we're going to do and when," Jameson said. "That would be nice. I guess I best change uniforms for this gathering. You say all the skippers are invited to this?" Keyes asked as he stood in the small cabin. Luxury wasn't something afforded to captains on minesweepers. A bunk, a desk attached to the wall, and a couple of chairs were about it, along with a wash basin and a small shower stall. "Yes, sir. Even going to have all the British skippers as well and the 4 Saudi skippers. At least they were all listed on the message traffic," Jameson said. 2 hours later, Jim Keyes found himself aboard the mine-countermine flagship, USS Tripoli. She had been with the amphibious forces, but her flight deck was needed for MH-53 Super Sea Stallion helicopters that served in the countermine operations. All the other skippers were present as well, some familiar to Keyes, and others not familiar as they were British and Saudi nationals. Regardless, the conversations all revolved around one question. What are we doing here? In the conference room, a petty officer called out, "Attention on deck," as Rear Admiral Blumfield entered. Blumfield was an academy graduate, class of 70, and had served on surface ships almost his entire naval career, except for the time spent in the 5-sided palace, commonly called the Pentagon. "Gentlemen, take your seats," Blumfield said, moving to the head of the conference room table, where 13 skippers were seated along with the commander of the Sea Stallion Squadron. In addition, the skipper of the USS Princeton was present as the Princeton's role would be revealed shortly, since she was a recently commissioned Ticonderoga-class cruiser. Minesweeping operations was not one of her roles. She was equipped to conduct anti-surface, anti-submarine, and anti-air operations. "Gentlemen, I have asked you here to give you an overview of what we will be doing in the near future and some of the challenges we are facing in accomplishing our mission. First, this is classified as a top-secret briefing, so I don't want to hear about it on the mess deck." "Understood?" Blumfield said. Everyone, to include the Saudi officers, acknowledged this with a nod. "In the upcoming operational plan, an amphibious assault is being planned on the coast of the UAE, which as we speak is being reconned by SEAL teams." Murmurs could be heard around the table. We will be expected to clear the waters leading to those beaches of sea mines. But first we have to clear the Strait of Hormuz of sea mines. That might be a bigger problem, as the Iranians consider that to be their waters. They have mined the north side, and the Iraqis mined the south side. We will concentrate on the south side. We have a plot of the existing channel through the strait at this time, and will only clear a portion to widen the channel for our ships. Our real effort will be off the coast of the UAE. The only coastline that the UAE has on the Gulf of Oman is around Fujairah, and although the hydrography is excellent, the city is right up against the water. The decision has been made that we will not destroy the towns, which is in this case what it would take to force an over-the-beach landing. Therefore, we will be clearing the strait and clearing out a beach on the Persian Gulf side of the UAE, the Admiral outlined. Commander Keyes half raised his hand. "Excuse me, sir, but can you tell us where that landing beach will be?" "At this time, I can't, as I don't know. Several places are being examined, and when I find out, you'll find out. Just know that once it is designated, we're going to be going in and clearing out the approaches," Admiral Blumfield said. "Sir," Captain Huntz, skipper of the USS Princeton, called out, gaining the Admiral's attention. "Yes, Captain," the Admiral acknowledged. "Sir, why is the Princeton participating in this?" Huntz asked. He suspected he knew the answer, but wanted confirmation. "Captain Huntz, the Princeton will provide air defense and anti-ship coverage for the mine-sweeping operation. Our ships are really not equipped to take on an enemy aircraft or silkworm missiles. Do you have a problem with that, Captain?" the Admiral asked. "No, sir, I just don't like the idea of taking my ship into mine-infested waters, that's all," Captain Huntz said. "I can appreciate your concern, but every ship in the United States Navy can be a minesweeper once. We will do our utmost to see that you don't encounter any mines. Any other questions?" This evoked a chuckle from the attending skippers. "Sir," the skipper from the HMS Catastock said. "Yes, sir. Your name, sir?" the Admiral asked. "Commander Lovell, Her Majesty's ship Catastock, sir." "And your question, Commander?" "Sir, do you have an idea of the size and depth of the minefields on the Gulf side of Oman?" "Good question, Commander. Here we have a problem. No satellite coverage has been devoted to mine operations in the Gulf. What intel we have has been second-hand and sporadic. We believe that the Iraqis have put in a 150-mile-long field along the coast, approximately 20 miles deep. It appears they have emplaced several rows of mines in that box. Intelligence feels we will encounter somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 mines, both contact and influence," the Admiral informed them. Low whistles and murmurs could be heard as the 15 skippers exchanged looks. "Gentlemen, that's about all I can tell you at this time. When I have more information on our future, I'll contact you. Once we get underway, we won't have an opportunity to get together again. As long as we're at anchor and basing out of Salalah, I'd like to have a weekly meeting to discuss our future. Will that be acceptable?" the Admiral asked. Everyone was in agreement. "In that case, gentlemen, will you all join me in the wardroom and have lunch? My launch is standing by to return you to your ships when you're ready to depart," the Admiral offered. Everyone accepted the dinner invitation. Commander Keyes stepped off the Admiral's launch and was met by his XO at the top of the gangplank. "Tony, let me change and meet me at the nav station," Keyes said, moving quickly to his cabin to change. Jameson moved out to the ladder, going up to the nav station. Keyes joined him in less than 10 minutes. "Pull up a chart of the north shore of the UAE," Keyes directed. Jameson dug in the map cabinet until he found the map he was looking for. "What are we looking for, Skipper?" Jameson asked, noting the excitement in Keyes's eyes. "We are looking, my young friend, for a deserted stretch of beach on the north shore with a hydrography that will support over-the-beach operations," Keyes said, spreading his hands over the map to flatten it, and then resting on his elbows to study the map. As they studied the map, some things became obvious. Up here on the north shore, it's too mountainous right down to the water, and the hydrography is wrong. Moving down the coast, it's too built up or not a wide enough area, Keyes said, moving his finger down the coast. Sir, what about this area west of Dubai? The hydrography is right. The beach is wide, 27 kilometers? And there's little in the way of buildup, Jameson pointed out. Yeah, that looks possible. Going west of there, the coast is a mixture of islands, very shallow waters. Shit, that has to be the beach, Keyes said. Beach for what, sir? Jameson asked. Beach for an amphibious assault. We're going to be tasked to not only clear the strait, but also clear a minefield off a beach for an amphibious landing, Keyes said, standing up straight. No shit, sir, Jameson said. This will be a first since Incheon in Korea, he exclaimed. Yep, and we're going to be part of it. Gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, Keyes said as he placed the map back in the map case. Mum's the word for now, Tony. Understood? Aye, aye, Skipper. Chapter 49. The National Guard arrives. 16th December 1990. 115th Infantry Brigade, 29th Division, Yanbu, Saudi Arabia. Stepping out of the air-conditioned charter jet from TWA, Lieutenant Colonel Gooderjohn was overwhelmed with the heat blast that greeted him in Yanbu. As he came down the stairs to the tarmac, a soldier handed him a liter bottle of water. He had already drunk 2 quarts of water in the last 2 hours on the flight. What is this for? Gooderjohn asked. Sir, you have to drink this to stay hydrated, the young soldier said. I'm just doing what I was told, sir. Taking the water bottle, Gooderjohn moved off with the other 250 members of his battalion that had flown over with him. A female sergeant first class with a bullhorn started speaking when the plane load was assembled in a hangar. Everyone, listen up. Welcome to Yanbu, Saudi Arabia. You will be here for approximately 72 hours. In that time, you are to drink a liter of water an hour and get yourselves acclimated to the heat. Today, it is a pleasant 100 degrees. Tonight, it will be a pleasant 70 degrees, and you will be thankful you have a sleeping bag. Nights get downright cold here in the desert. A couple of buses will arrive shortly and take you to the area where you'll be staying until you move out. Your battalion sergeant major was in the advance party and has designated your area. He'll meet you when the buses drop you off. Your rucksacks and baggage will be transported to your battalion area for you to claim. Chow is served 24/7 and is located in the vicinity of your temporary quarters. Latrine facilities are also co-located with you, but showers are limited, and there is no hot water for showers. Enjoy. She finished her speech and departed just as 4 buses pulled up, and the battalion sergeant major was the first off. Without a bullhorn, he made himself heard. Listen up, people! Shut up! He yelled. All right, when I call your name, get on one of the buses. When you get to where you're going, someone will point out where your company area is, and your first sergeant will meet you there. Before you leave here, make a sensitive items check. Colonel Gooderjohn, sir, if you will. There's a vehicle behind the buses that will take you over to the battalion area. Thank you, Sergeant Major, Gooderjohn said, picking up a small bag and heading to the pickup truck waiting for him. As the truck took him across the airfield, he noted some large craters off the runway and some new asphalt on the runway. Each corner of the airfield, from what he could see, had Hawk missiles positioned. Several partially underground sandbagged bunkers were noted as well. Each had a camouflage net suspended over them. As he headed into the Battalion Operations Center, or TOX, he noticed several rows of vehicles lined up behind it. He stopped for a moment and stared at them. They were all painted in desert camouflage. When they'd been put on the train to go to Norfolk, they'd all been OD green. Somewhere along the way, they'd all gotten a paint job. As he entered the TOC, an NCO came through the door. Oh, good day, sir. Glad I found you. You have a meeting at the brigade TOC in 30 minutes, the sergeant said. Crap. I wanted to just find a bed for a few hours and sleep. Okay, where's the brigade TOC and where are my sleep quarters? Gooderjohn asked. Sir, I'll show you where you're sleeping. It's nothing fancy, mind you. Sergeant Major said it would have to do," the sergeant said as he escorted Gooderjohn over to the sleep area. Gooderjohn found his bed was an army cot in the middle of the Company Bay area. He would be sleeping just like the rest of his soldiers, and sleeping was exactly what he wanted to do after the 23-hour plane flight. "Okay, now where's this meeting I'm supposed to be at?" he asked his escort. "Sir, I'll take you there. It's on the other side of our vehicle park," the sergeant said as Gooderjohn picked up his hat and headed for the exit point in Tent City. "Gooderjohn, nice to see you made it. Good flight?" the brigade commander asked. "Yes, sir. If you call sitting for 24 hours a good flight. Truthfully, I would love to just get some sleep right about now," Gooderjohn said, as he pulled out a folding chair at the conference table. The meeting was being held in the Brigade TOC, which was set up in one half of the departure lounge for deportees. The other battalion commanders were already present. "Well, you can after this meeting, and this won't be long. We'll be here for a week, and you need to get your troops acclimated to the climate. Let them sleep in the day but train at night, having them out walking at night with plenty of water. They can work on their vehicles as well, but if the air raid siren goes off, it's lights out immediately and find a bunker. We need to conduct inspections for all the vehicles, and I would recommend you set up an inspection line for the mechanic to go over each vehicle. Those Bradley fighting vehicles have been sitting on those ships in port areas for over a month now. Some seals may need replacing. Fluid levels need to be checked. I would recommend everyone use graphite to lubricate weapons, as using oil will only trap the grit on the weapon. One thing we don't do in training is clean our ammo because we use it right away. Here they may not be using it, and if it's sitting in magazines, it's going to corrode in this salt air and jam the weapons. Every day, ammo has to be taken out of the magazines and cleaned. Be sure your vehicles have additional filters." "Sir, excuse me," Warrant Officer Gregory, the battalion motor officer, said. "Yes, Mr. Gregory." "Sorry, sir, but we've already seen a problem with the air intakes on the Hummers. There's an easy fix," Gregory said. "And what might that be?" "Sir, if the wives would send us their discarded pantyhose, we can put those over the intakes on the Hummers, and that'll cut the dirt getting into the filter by almost half," Mr. Gregory pointed out. "You're joking, right?" Colonel Warren asked. "No, sir, I'm as serious as a heart attack," Mr. Gregory said with a straight face. Colonel Warren studied the man's facial expression, still expecting this to be a joke. Finally, he said, "All right, gentlemen, you heard the man. Have everyone write and ask their wives and sweethearts to send them their pantyhose. I can just imagine what the reaction is going to be back home when those requests are read," Colonel Warren said with a chuckle. "Anything else, Chief?" "No, sir." "Okay, moving along. After a week here, we'll be moving out to replace either the 82nd or the 101st, who have been on the line and holding the Iraqi army at bay for a month now and need to come back in for some downtime. At some point we're going over on the offense, and I don't know what our mission will be, but I don't think we'll be sitting here pulling security on this airfield. The 28th Division is flowing into a city down south, Jeddah, and for the time being their mission is the same as ours," Warren pointed out. "Sir, do you think we're going to get into it with the Iraqis?" the 2nd Battalion commander asked. His tone in asking the question set off alarm bells in Warren's head. "Well, I hope we didn't come all this way to just sit on our asses. Yes, I think we're going to get into it, and you need to let your soldiers right now that we are. The Iraqi soldier has been portrayed as being 10 feet tall. Do you see any Arabs around here that are 10 feet tall or weigh more than 150 pounds? No, you don't. Get your soldiers in the right frame of mind, a winning frame of mind." "Any questions?" Warren asked. God, don't tell me I have a defeated attitude with a battalion commander, he was thinking. All right, next order of business. Everyone is confined to this airfield. No going into town. We want as small a footprint on the locals as possible. We're here to win the war and not lose the peace. The local customs are so different from back home that we cannot afford to have one of these guys go into town and screw things up. So everyone is confined to the airfield, and that applies not only to this brigade, but to all Americans located here. Certain people will be able to go into town to coordinate business, but they're primarily the supply people. If you train hard at night, they'll be too tired to attempt to go to town, and you know someone will do it. If it happens, a summary court-martial at a minimum, no Article 15s. Is that understood? Warren asked. He wanted to be sure that this did not happen. Not since World War II has a National Guard division deployed to a combat zone. This is going to be big news back home, besides the fact that our families want to know what we are doing. The press is going to be all over this place. They must be treated with respect, but remember, they're not here to be your friends, but to get a story. Be sure they're getting the right story and not Joe Dope's bitch session. Everything is on the record with these people, regardless of what they say. Treat them as if they were 04 majors. No classified information about our strength, or where we're going, or what we're doing. Watch the boys and counsel them about making irresponsible comments. When they're in your AO, have a responsible NCO escort them. If a soldier doesn't want to talk to them, that's the soldier's right. And the press has no right to stop a soldier either. Any questions? Sir, will they be escorted by the public affairs folks? Gooderjohn asked. No telling. Ideally, yes, but they just might be wandering on their own. If they are, report it right away, and we'll get someone to escort them to the Division Public Affairs Office. Okay, we have these new navigation devices called Slugger. They're about the size of a cigar box and will be issued one per company. They use satellites to pinpoint your location on the ground within 10 meters. Learn how to use the damn things. All the fire support officers will also have one. Once we're out in the desert, navigation is going to be a bitch. These will really help, but it's going to take some training to use them, right? Colonel Warren paused to check his notes in his little green notebook that every commander carried. Okay, that's all I have for this evening. Gooderjohn, you managed to stay awake. Congratulations. If there's nothing else, I'll see you all in the morning at 800. We'll meet each morning at 800 and each evening at 1800 hours. Any final questions? There were none, and everyone departed back to their battalion areas. Chapter 50. Relief in Place. 30th December 1990. Côte d'Ivoire Airborne Corps HQ, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The two National Guard divisions, the 28th and the 29th, were mostly on the ground and had been for the last 2 weeks, with some supply and logistic tail still flowing in-country. General Luck had been around and visited both of them and was impressed with what he saw. They weren't up to the level of an active Army mechanized division, but they weren't bad either. He felt assured that with a bit of time, they would be ready to take on the Iraqi forces before the Corps. The 28th was sitting in Jeddah, and the 29th was in Yanbu. It was time to relieve the 101st and the 82nd. Also, at his disposal, were the 8th Saudi Mechanized Brigade, the 10th Saudi Brigade, and the remnants of the Saudi 45th Armored Brigade. "Get me General Yosak on the phone, please," Luck said to his aide as he walked back into the office with the aide in tow. "Yes, sir." Entering his office, General Luck began removing his load-bearing equipment, LBE, to include his sidearm. When he left his office, he dressed just like any private in the Corps. Helmet, LBE, sidearm, gas mask, and CPOG, or chemical protective overgarment, which every soldier absolutely hated to have to put on. When done, he grabbed a bottle of water from the small ice chest in his office. "Sir, General Yosak will be on the line in a minute," the aide said, sticking his head through the doorway. "Thanks, Brad. Close the door, please," Luck responded, reaching for the phone as he swallowed another mouthful. "Hello, John. How was your day?" Luck said as he heard Yosak come on the line. "Good. What you got?" Yosak asked. "John, I have these 2 Saudi brigades and part of a 3rd here in my AO. Could we get a Saudi general with staff to come over and pull them together into a task force? I have a plan that I could use them better than having 3 separate brigades running around as they please. It would make the command and control so much easier and more efficient," Luck said. "How are you thinking about using them?" Yusak's interest was piqued. I'm thinking of having them relieve the 101st in the north and set up a defensive line. The 37th Iraqi Army Division is about the only viable force up on the north, with the 2nd Iraqi Army Division sitting in Tabuk. That would free up the 28th Division for me to use along with the 29th in the push through Medina and down to the road towards Bureda, Luck said. Yosak muttered. Maybe you should reconsider something. Medina is considered one of the holy cities. We should let a Saudi force go in there and clean it out rather than putting Americans in there, Yosak pointed out. Yeah, we can do that. I'll take one of the Saudi brigades and run them into Medina, while I have one brigade of the mech divisions take their place on the line. Once Medina is cleaned out, the local Saudi National Guard can control the city, and I can swap out the 2 units. What do you think? Luck asked. I think I need to find you a Saudi general to take charge of those Saudi brigades. I'll get back to you. Anything else? No, that's it. Give my regards to Norm. General Luck approached the Saudi general, who had just been shown into his office. MG Abdul Ali Fahim was not what General Luck had been expecting. MG Abdul was tall for an Arab, well-built and muscular. Most Saudi generals had expanded waistlines, but not MG Abdul. His V-shaped upper torso indicated a rigorous workout routine. His high cheekbones and cold blue eyes seemed to pierce right through a person. Both men extended their hands. Very good to meet you, General Abdul, Luck said with sincerity. And I you, General Luck, Abdul said with a British accent. Please have a seat, Luck said, pointing at one of the overstuffed chairs in his office. Thank you. I want you to know that I am very glad to be assigned to your corps and be taking command of the Saudi forces under your command, Abdul said. Well, I can tell you I'm glad you're here. As you know, the 7th Republican Guard Division is in Medina, and the Saudi National Guard forces there have been harassing the daylights out of them. They've been whittled down to about a reinforced brigade now. I want to clean them out, but don't want to send American soldiers in there to do it. Suppose we send one of your brigades in and finish the job north, and let me deal with the Iraqi 2nd Corps with air support from you, General Abdul offered. General, you appear to be well informed of our current dispositions and plans, Luck said, leaning slightly forward in his chair. Soldiers talk and others listen, was all General Abdul would say. Very well. You and your forces will take Medina. My operations officer will draw up the plan and get it to your staff. The day of the attack will coincide with the day General Schwarzkopf indicates, and not before. However, we need you to do a relief in place with the 82nd Airborne. How about tomorrow you and I travel up to the 82nd, and I introduce you to Major General Ed Ford. He can give you a brief on his disposition and what he's seeing, Luck said. I will look forward to that, sir. Abdul stood. Until tomorrow. My aide will get with yours for the details of our trip tomorrow, he concluded, shaking Luck's hand and departing the office. The helicopter flight out to the main CP for the 82nd was pleasant in the early morning hours, as the sun had just crested the horizon and the air thermals hadn't started for the day. General Abdul hadn't ridden in a Black Hawk before, as the Saudi army had just acquired several, and they hadn't been seen much outside of Riyadh before it was overrun. He was rather enjoying the flight. He also hadn't served in this region, and was enjoying being able to see the terrain from the air. As he did so, he was making mental notes about the landscape. His concentration was broken when the pilot announced they would be landing in 2 minutes. As the aircraft touched down and the dust settled, the crew chief slid the door open as Major General Ford was approaching the aircraft. Saluting, Major General Ford said, "Morning, sir," acknowledging Lieutenant General Luck. "Morning, Ed. I'd like you to meet Major General Abdul. His unit will be conducting a relief in place with some of your units. His unit is going to go in to clean out Medina and hold the remnants of the 2nd Republican Guard Corps," Luck said as the 2 major generals exchanged handshakes. "Sir, I'm glad to meet you and give you this ground," General Ford said. "And I, sir, am happy to take it. It is time to clean these people out," Abdul replied. Shall we go into the talk and give you a brief on how we're deployed and what we've been seeing? We haven't entered the city at all, but have remained in overwatch positions and have a good idea of what has been going on and where they're strongest, Ford said, as he led everyone to the main talk. Inside, the G3 staff were standing with the G2 to give the brief. They even had an interpreter with them, as they weren't sure of Major General Abdul's command of the English language. Motioning to a seat in the very front, General Luck sat on one side of General Abdul, while General Ford sat on the other. "Good morning, sir," Colonel Dobbins said, addressing the three general officers. "I'm Colonel Dobbins, the G3 for the division. This briefing will discuss the current disposition of our division and the disposition of the Republican Guard forces, from what we've learned from observing and from members of the Saudi National Guard forces that stayed behind and are harassing the 7th in Medina. At the conclusion of the brief, Lieutenant Colonel Mackenzie and I will be available to answer your questions. If you direct your attention to this map," Dobbins said, as he picked up a pointer and pointed at a map of the division sector with an overlay showing the position of the division forces. "Here in the northern portion of our sector, we have the 1st Brigade with 3 battalions opposing the remnants of the 7th Republican Guard Division. The 7th was hit pretty hard in its move towards Medina by naval and air force assets and the 45th Saudi Armor Brigade. When it arrived in Medina, we calculated his strength to be 70%. He then launched an attack on the few roads through the 1st Brigade sector and paid dearly for that. At the conclusion of that engagement, we calculated his strength to be less than 50%. Since then, the Saudi National Guard stay-behind forces have been interrupting his resupply, taking out key leaders, and generally creating fear and uncertainty in his forces. We've arranged for a Saudi National Guard member to serve as a liaison to General Abdul prior to you launching your operations. The 1st Brigade has 1 battalion on the left flank, with 2 companies forward and 1 in depth. The forward 2 companies have mines and obstacles on the main roads, and I might add about the only roads through their sector. The 3rd company in depth is at the crossroads where those 2 roads intersect. The 2nd Battalion in the center has 3 companies, all arrayed in depth along the one road through his sector, which is the major highway coming out of Medina. He has an engagement area that all 3 companies can cover by fire simultaneously. That engagement area is also ringed with mines. On the right flank, the 3rd Battalion has 2 roads through his sector, one of which is a major highway. He has 2 companies each covering an engagement area along the roads, and 1 company in depth, positioned so a portion of that company can cover each engagement area. Each battalion has a supporting 105 battery in their sector. Initially, we didn't have any 155 support, but with the air support we've received, it wasn't necessary. We have road obstacles in these locations, and we will remove them prior to your attack if you're going to use these roads initially. Minefields are indicated, and most are FASCAM fields that have self-destructed. We've been given a system called MOPMS, Modular Pack Mine System, which is a mine-laying system that's experimental right now, but we've received it, and it performed well. One individual can control up to 17 containers, and each has a mix of anti-tank and anti-personnel mines. These have been emplaced around the engagement areas in case they attempt another attack. Initially, the FASCAM fields were emplaced by helicopters, as well as Air Force assets dropping CBU-89B and CBU-78B bombs. If there are no questions, I will be followed by Lieutenant Colonel Mackenzie, the G2. Colonel Dobbins concluded, trading places with Mackenzie. Good morning, sir. I will cover the 7th Republican Guard Division as we currently understand it. As Colonel Dobbins told you, we estimate the 7th's strength to be less than 50% at this time. Morale appears to be low from the reports we've received. Resupply has been greatly disrupted due to airstrikes on the main road leading from Buraida in addition to frequent mine-laying operations along the road. From what the Saudi National Guard liaison officer can tell us, it appears that the bulk of his forces are holed up in the district of Ad-Difa, here, and down to Koch in the south. That's about 11,000 meters. Ash and trash units are occupying the city proper. Excuse me, Colonel, Abdul interrupted, but what is ash and trash units? I am not familiar with this type of unit. Sorry, sir, that's American slang for supply and service units, Mackenzie confessed. Thank you. That sounds very appropriate. Ash and trash, I like that term. Ash and trash, I must remember this, Abdul said with a chuckle. Please continue, he directed. Yes, sir. Currently we have air parity with this air coverage. As you'll be launching your attack at approximately the same time that 68 Airborne Corps is going to launch against the 5th Republican Guard Division to the south, you may anticipate friendly air superiority over you. What about the artillery support that the 7th has? Have they been hitting you very much? General Abdul asked. Sir, most of their artillery was taken out as they advanced towards Medina. We place priority of targets as his air defense weapons first, artillery second, and tanks third. Once he entered Medina, we shifted the priority to hitting artillery, reinforcements, and supply depots in that order. He doesn't have much artillery left, and none is getting through to him, nor is he getting much in the way of resupply. Not going to say you're going to have a walk in the park in there, but he won't be anywhere near full strength, or half strength for that matter, General Luck said. That is good, General. This will be a good test for my soldiers. It is embarrassing enough that he got this far. It is time we, the armed forces of Saudi Arabia, reclaim what we lost, our country and our dignity, General Abdul said with some pride. Sir, I think we'll pause at this point, have some lunch, and then come back and discuss the 5th Republican Guard Division and what we've done to them, General Ford said, as he stood and pointed to the door. Chapter 51. New Year Command Brief. January 1991. CENTCOM Forward HQ. Military Technological College. Muscat, Oman. New Year's Eve was a rather sober affair, considering that no alcohol was allowed for U.S. forces. New Year's Day was an off day for everyone to enjoy watching football games for those that had TV access. Unfortunately, most games were televised in the early morning hours, as Oman was 8 hours ahead. A 3 in the afternoon kickoff was starting at 11:00 p.m. in Muscat. January 2nd was a duty day, but not until noon for the CENTCOM staff. General Schwarzkopf wanted an update on the unit status and locations. Without divulging it to anyone, he was ready to set some dates on the calendar if the staff assessment was good. Good afternoon, sir, General Schless said, as Schwarzkopf took his seat and everyone settled down. Afternoon, everyone. Let's get going, Schwarzkopf said in his usual joyful tone. He was a bear of a man, but you could always tell when he was in a good mood. Today, he was in a good mood. Sir, we will be covering the latest intel updates, followed by an update on the status of each of the forces and our overall supply status, Schless said. Sir, the G2. General O'Donnell stepped up to the podium. Sir, the enemy continues to prepare his positions in the UAE. There have been no additional forces introduced to the UAE theater, nor into Saudi Arabia. The forces in the UAE are being resupplied by both ground transportation and over-the-shore resupply coming in at the ports of Al Jazeera and Al Hamria, O'Donnell said, pointing to each port. Iraqi naval vessels are using the port of Al Maina in Dubai, which has dry dock facilities. The Iraqi Navy captured several vessels when it overran Saudi and Kuwait, and some of those crews switched loyalty. Those vessels are patrolling the Persian Gulf, but haven't ventured through the strait. They've established a radar site on this abandoned oil platform off the coast of the UAE, and are capable of looking into a large portion of the strait. They maintain a couple patrol boats in the vicinity with anti-aircraft missiles. The radar also tracks aircraft as well as ships coming through the strait. Looking over at General Schless, Schwarzkopf said, "Something is going to have to be done about that site. Let's talk after this." Schless nodded in acknowledgement and wrote some notes. O'Donnell went on to explain, Frogfoot aircraft are staging out of the Abu Dhabi International and Dubai International airports, but all other aircraft are coming out of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, or Iraq. Both of these airports have a mix of air defense weapons, to include SA-9, SA-6, ZSU-23-4, ZSU-57-2, and SA-7s. Excuse my interrupting you, but what do we know about his air defense systems? Schwarzkopf asked. Sir, the Iraqi air defense system is a centralized system employing Soviet tactics. The system was built by Thomson CSF, a French company, but is connected to a British logistics and battle management system. It's a system tailored to the Iran-Iraq conflict and designed to handle 20 to 30 aircraft raids, such as Iran was throwing at them. Truthfully, we don't believe it could handle a major surge campaign. A surge day during the Iran-Iraq war was 20 aircraft a day in raids of 4 aircraft at a time. The best pilots aren't in the air defense roles, but in the ground attack support roles, General Horner interjected. What about SA-2 and SA-3s? The CENTCOM commander asked. We've seen some over Kuwait and northern Saudi, but haven't seen any in the southern or western parts of Saudi or the UAE. His westernmost system is around Riyadh, and in the east around Dammam. We've been plotting them and have a good idea where each of the systems is located, and they'll be the first to be taken out when the air campaign starts, Horner explained. Nodding in approval, Schwarzkopf told O'Donnell to continue. In the west, the 2nd Iraqi Army Corps is at 30% strength, opposing the 101st Airborne, with the 2nd Iraqi Army Division at 80% strength and still sitting up in Tabuk. The 2nd Republican Guard Corps is down to less than 40% strength, with the 7th Republican Guard Division stuck in Medina and under pressure from the Saudi National Guard forces that remained in the city. The 5th Republican Guard Division, facing the 82nd Airborne, has been on the receiving end of airstrikes and is down in strength as well. Reports indicate that resupply to both of these corps is limited due to distances, a scorched earth policy exercised by the retreating Saudi forces, and airstrikes interdicting the supply lines, O'Donnell said, pausing to reorient this map to the west. While he did so, Schwarzkopf turned to General Yosak. Can General Luck hold them? Sir, the 15th Airborne Corps has the 2 National Guard divisions closing in on Jeddah and Yanbu, and has now 3 Saudi brigades, 2 mechanized, and 1 an armor brigade, plus an armor team from the 24th that arrived in the opening days. Gary Luck intends to turn the Saudi brigades against the 7th Republican Guard Division in Medina, and then execute a relief in place with the 101st, and send Saudis to Tabuk. He's going to use the rest to take out the 5th Republican Guard and move on to Buraida. He doesn't want to have American forces in Medina, since it's considered a holy city, Yosak explained. I don't know, Schwarzkopf said. Luck will be fighting in 2 directions. He'll be looking east with the bulk of his force, and north with a tiny force of Saudis. See me after this, and let's talk to Luck, Schwarzkopf said. Schless knew Schwarzkopf well enough to see the wheels turning in Stormin Norman's head. What else you have, O'Donnell? Sir, you asked about chemical weapons. We haven't seen any movement of those weapons from his strategic stockpiles in the northern part of Iraq, nor any indication that he's moved any chemical weapons into Saudi or the UAE, O'Donnell explained. Good. Keep an eye on those weapons. If you see any indication, I want to know about it immediately. Understood? Yes, sir. Moving along, we have been monitoring his communications and have discovered that there are some Russian personnel operating with the Iraqis, and specifically as pilots and air defense advisors. We don't know if they're official military personnel or a quasi-mercenary force. We suspect a bit of both, but will continue to monitor the situation. We're sure that there are a couple of Soviet naval advisors on the patrol craft, and we're pretty sure there are a couple of Soviet officers on the oil platform, with the sea and air radar. We've identified his primary command frequencies and are prepared to jam them on your orders, especially with the Republican Guard Corps. Good. The 1st Republican Guard Corps is the main target, followed by the 9th Iraqi Corps, but I want to hit the 9th when we launch the attack, and then monitor and switch to the 1st Republican Guard Corps when the 9th starts crying for help. This should coincide with our air campaign, Schwarzkopf said, and the horseholders began writing notes. Looking back at O'Donnell, he said, "Anything else?" "Sir, just that we've been monitoring his logistics, and it appears that he has fuel shortages in the west with the 2nd Iraqi Corps, as he parked a good number of tanks for lack of fuel, and we hit them with airstrikes as well as a supply depot. We doubt if he has the supply reserve to continue any kind of attack, and may even have trouble attempting to conduct a retrograde operation," O'Donnell concluded. "That's all I have for you today, sir." "Good rundown. Who's next?" Schwarzkopf asked, already knowing the answer to his question. Exchanging places with O'Donnell, General Schless took center stage. "Sir, the status of our forces is as follows." He pointed to a highlighted VGT slide with each unit listed, and the status of its forces expressed in percentages. 100% equated to all elements in country and logistics, currently sufficient for a 180-day offensive campaign. As you can see, sir, all elements of the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions are 100%. The 29th and 28th Infantry Divisions are 50% at this time, and within the next 90 days will be 100%. The 24th Infantry Division is 100%, as is the 3rd Armored Cav Regiment. The elements of the 7 Corps are at 75% strength, with the 50th Armored Division being at 50%. It, too, will be 100% in the next 90 days. Our 2 U.S. Marine Divisions are at 100% at this time. The British 1st Armored Division is 100%, and our host nation's forces are reporting 100%, along with the 2 Egyptian divisions. So what I'm hearing is that within 90 days we'll be at 100% strength in our ground forces that have been allocated to us. Is that correct? Schwarzkopf asked. Yes, sir. That is correct, General Schless responded. Turning his attention to Admiral Muse, Schwarzkopf asked, "And for our naval elements, are we at full strength?" Sir, naval forces are at full strength with 90% operational aircraft afloat. The Wisconsin and Missouri are with the amphibious force. The 1st Marine Division is currently moving from their staging area to Almiraer. The path through the minefield is plotted and hasn't changed, but we're continuing to monitor it, so any changes will be addressed prior to the fleet passing through the strait. We do have a concern for this abandoned oil platform that has both air and sea radar, however, the Admiral stated. Don't be. We're going to take care of that, Schwarzkopf informed the group. Several looks were exchanged. General Horner, how is the Air Force status at this time? Sir, we have a sufficient number of aircraft across the full spectrum of capabilities. We have 90% availability right now, and on day 1, we can surge to 2,500 sorties a day for a 30-day period at 80% availability. 12. On day 1, we will have 98% availability, Horner explained. General Schwarzkopf sat for a minute, deep in thought. Have I covered all the bases? General Pegasus, how are our logistics for supporting an operation? Schwarzkopf asked, knowing that you could have the best fighting systems, but if your logistics failed, you failed. Sir, we currently have on hand sufficient logistic stockpiles to conduct a 180-day campaign. Our supply systems and flow are uninterrupted. Our supply depots are heavily guarded both from ground infiltration and from air threats. We now have port security from the U.S. Coast Guard and haven't had any more threats from commandos or underwater divers. Supply ships are being quickly unloaded and supplies cleared from the port areas. Airflow of personnel is on schedule and uninterrupted with escort fighters for each aircraft approaching the peninsula airspace. In 90 days, we will have increased our logistics base to a 230-day level, Pegasus explained, handing him a briefing book outlining everything in the logistics arena. Before Schwarzkopf reached for the book, he looked at Pegasus. "Sign the book, attesting to its accuracy." There was almost stunned silence at this request, but General Pegasus took out a pen and did so before handing the briefing book over to Schwarzkopf. Finally, Schwarzkopf stood and turned to face the group. "Gentlemen, we have good intelligence, we have sufficient supplies, and we have sufficient forces for the first phase of this operation. Adjust your plans accordingly, as we will commence offensive operations on 1st of April. General Schless will have the operational orders to you in 30 days. Are there any questions?" he asked, knowing there probably would be none. The expressions he was seeing were all smiles, as everyone understood they were finally going to get this show moving. Chapter 52. Not So Abandoned Oil Platform. 5th of January 1991. Persian Gulf. Major Uri Aleksenko from the Soviet Air Defense Force did not particularly like being stuck on an old abandoned oil platform. Sergeant Nikolai Dragunov was keeping him company, as he was a technical advisor for the radar system that had been installed. Since the winter had settled on the Persian Gulf, the days were comfortable, with the nights becoming cold enough that a jacket was necessary. Both men had developed a taste for Cuban cigars since arriving in the Middle East and could afford to purchase them. On this night, they were on the rail, looking out over the Strait and the Gulf waters. A single cargo ship coming out of the Strait had passed them, all aglow with lights. The lights from atop of the skyscrapers in Dubai could be faintly seen on the southwestern horizon, along with the glow of lights from Ras Al Khaimah, some 25 miles to the east-southeast. Behind and above them were the 1S-11 and 1S-31 radar systems that had been significantly modified for this location. Both had been taken off their normal vehicle, which was part of the SA-6 Gainfield air defense system, and modified to be placed on this oil platform. The systems were capable of picking up aircraft coming in from the Strait of Hormuz or anywhere up to 200 kilometers away. If the operators knew what they were doing, which Major Aleksenko had his doubts, then this jerry-rigged system should prove to be an exceptional early warning system. The operative word in this equation was should, but that was largely dependent on the ability of the operators to know what the hell they were doing. Despite more than a year of training, his partner in crime, Sergeant Dragunov, was harboring the same troubling thoughts about the Iraqi technicians and their ability to use and operate these bastardized radar systems properly. "Major, whose idea was it for these radar systems to be removed from their vehicles, transported to this oil rig, and reassembled, expecting them to function properly?" Sergeant Dragunov asked. They were alone, so he felt it safe to ask such a question. In the old days or back in the Soviet Union, the proper address would be Comrade Major or Comrade Sergeant. But out here alone, familiarity was being observed. "Sergeant, enjoy your cigar and do not ask questions. As they say, ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do and die. Somebody higher up than you and I thought this up, and we were tasked with executing it. If the systems do not work, we blame it on the Iraqis, who are about as dumb as the camels they ride," Major Aleksenko explained, showing his disdain for the Iraqis and his current assignment. "Besides, this is not such a bad duty. We have no flies bothering us. We have no smelly sheep crapping everywhere to worry about. We have—" "No women, and no vodka is what we have, Major," the sergeant interrupted. "I am so tired of drinking tea that I even piss tea now," Sergeant Dragunov muttered under his breath. "Cheer up, Dragunov. Soon we will be posted back to our home base in Kiev, and we'll have a year's pay in our pockets above our normal pay," Alexenko pointed out. "I suppose you are right. The bonus pay for coming here does make it worth it. Sure as hell cannot spend it on this oil rig," Dragunov said as he took a last puff on his cigar and tossed it into the water below. "I'm going to turn in after I make one more check of the equipment and the night shift operating it." Major Alexenko watched as the cigar stub descended like one of the meteors that he'd seen so many times before at night on the platform. What he hadn't noticed was what was located just under the dark water near where the cigar had landed. Instead, he turned and headed back to his own duties for the time being. USS Florida, SSBN 728. Arabian Gulf. The Florida silently followed a Russian cargo ship through the strait, avoiding the minefields and confirming their locations. Once the sun had set, she slowly and quietly rose to periscope depth. "Con, sonar," Petty Officer Simmons announced. "Sonar, what you got?" asked Commander Fletcher. "Con, the only traffic is Sierra 1, the Russian cargo ship we were following. He is 25 miles southwest of us on a steady course. The target is 2,000 yards on the nose from us," Simmons reported. "Good," Fletcher said, looking at the chief of the boat, Master Chief Jack Bridges, who was chief of the watch, standing over the ship control party. "Mr. Kennedy, proceed to periscope depth," the captain directed. Mr. Kennedy was on his first deployment, having graduated from the submarine officers course just prior to the departure. As a new lieutenant aboard, Commander Fletcher was taking note of how he performed. "Proceed to periscope depth, aye, sir," Kennedy said, and turned to the dive officer of the watch. "Dive, make your depth 60 feet. "Make my depth 60 feet, aye, sir. Full rise. Both planes give me 10 degrees up. Chief of the watch, flood auxiliaries," the duty officer on watch ordered. "Take us to 60 feet, 10 degrees up, reduce speed to 3 knots, the cobby said to the plainsman and the helmsman, Osht Fairweather plainsman. The Florida responded beautifully, raising her bow ever so gently and gliding to the desired depth. "Sonar, Con," Mr. Kennedy called out. "Report all contacts." "Con, 2 contacts. The Sierra 1 we're following at 25 miles, and the target at 2,000 yards, Petty Officer Simmons reported. Simmons had been with Fletcher for the past year, and his voice gave some reassurance to Fletcher. "Roger, sonar," Fletcher responded. As the Florida reached periscope depth, the Purvis system showed those on the con what the periscope was seeing on the surface. 2,000 yards away, they spotted their primary objective, the oil platform. It was bathed in lights against a moonless black sky, perfectly silhouetting itself for them. Lieutenant Higgins had just broken the surface along with his team, SEAL Team 2, when 2 glowing cigars landed 15 feet away in the dark waters. The 30 men of the team were in the water with him. All of the SEALs turned and looked to make sure they hadn't been spotted and that their stealth was still intact. They each knew the job they had to execute, the importance of the mission, and how quickly things could go sideways on them if they weren't careful. They'd done their homework, though. Prior to boarding the Florida, they'd diagrammed the oil rig on shore and done several walkthroughs. Some of the team members had been a part of the mission back in 1987 to seize an Iranian oil platform. That experience had been invaluable during the walkthroughs. They were all aware of who the prize targets were for capture. This mission wasn't meant to grab and seize the platform. It was a snatch and grab mission. The only 2 people on this platform that mattered were 2 apparent Russian soldiers. This was the first oil platform a ship or aircraft would run up against once they exited the strait, which was what made this particular platform so valuable. The rig itself wasn't anything special. It was supported on 6 tubular steel legs, 10 feet in circumference, with 2 boat docks connected by gangplanks to the steel legs. The rig was 4 stories high, with the lowest level being 30 feet above the water, On the topmost level was a helipad, with 3 military mill vans on the side of the helipad. The 2 outer mill vans had radar antennas on top, rotating constantly. The operators for the system sat inside the air-conditioned center mill van and monitored the radar systems. One flight down was the crew quarters, a dining facility, and a recreation room with Iranian and Iraqi television. Laser discs were also present for the crew's entertainment. Of course, they had been censored by the Islamic clerics. A medical clinic was also on this level. The bottom 2 floors contained the machinery to pump oil, which they'd long since been abandoned, as this platform was more of an early warning system than an oil-producing platform. The generator that serviced the entire facility was located on the bottom level. Lieutenant Higgins had broken his 30-man team into 3 teams. 1 team for the upper floor and the mill vans, 1 team for the second floor and the crew's quarters, and the last team for the generator and a security element. The security element would clear the bottom 2 floors of any potential guards and secure the exfiltration route. Since they had the bottom 2 floors, they were the first out of the water and silently moving up the stairs to the bottom 2 floors. For this part of the mission, they utilized their MP5s with silencers and subsonic rounds. When it came time to rock and roll in a real gunfight, they'd switch back to their standard ammo. But for right now, the subsonic rounds would help ensure their silenced MP5s would stay silent. This first part of the mission required absolute stealth. When Lieutenant Higgins got the word that the bottom 2 floors were secured, the rest of his teams approached the flights of stairs near the boat docks. The top floor team went up one side, and the second floor team went up the other side. Reaching the top floor, the team spread out before crossing the helipad and surrounding the mill vans. A pair of SEALs crept up to each of the vans. One operator grabbed the door, while the other had his MP5 aimed at it. On the count of 3, the operator holding the door yanked it open. The operators had just moments to look at the surprised soldiers and verify they weren't the Russians they were after. Once they did, the operators opened up with their MP5s. In fractions of a second, they had riddled their bodies with bullets before they could sound an alarm or alert their comrades that they were under attack. With the element of surprise still on their side, the operators moved to their next objective, supporting the snatch and grab team that was responsible for grabbing the Russian soldiers themselves. Lieutenant Higgins was on the second floor. Opening the door to the corridor, he saw it was empty. His ears registered some music softly playing from the direction of the mess hall area. As Higgins moved down one side of the corridor, another team member moved down the other side. Coming to a closed door, they bypassed it, letting another team clear it. Further down the hall, they saw the open door leading to the recreation room and the mess hall. The medical facility was easy to identify from the large red cross and red crescent on the door. Higgins had a good idea which rooms contained the Iraqi commander and the 2 Soviet advisors. They were likely in the section of the deck that held 6 separate rooms. Most of the quarters on the platforms tended to sleep 4. But as this platform wasn't functioning as an oil platform, there were fewer people aboard than normal. Most of the quarters only had 1 or 2 people utilizing a room. At this hour, very few people were awake. As Higgins and his partner approached the kitchen, a person suddenly appeared in the hallway. A cook had walked out of the kitchen and practically bumped right into Higgins. Placing the silenced barrel of his MP5 in the man's face, he whispered in Arabic, "Shut the fuck up." The cook almost immediately dropped to his knees and softly began speaking. With his weapon in one hand, Higgins held his finger to his lips, giving the universal symbol to be quiet. The cook slowly nodded and hushed up. Turning to his comrade, Higgins said, "Zip tie his hands and feet, gag him, and let's move." Higgins's partner pulled the zip ties from his front chest rig and motioned for the cook to follow him back into the kitchen. He told the man in Arabic to lie down on his belly and place his hands behind him. He tied up his hands and then his legs. He then grabbed for a rag and put it partially in the man's mouth and placed a piece of duct tape over it to hold it in place. Continuing deeper into the facility, Higgins located the 3 rooms he was looking for. The doors were closed. He wasn't sure who occupied which room, but this wasn't a time to go in guns blazing. Besides Higgins, 5 other operators lined up against the doors, 2 seals on each door. Higgins noted that none of the doors appeared to have locks, as there were no slots for keys. He tried the doorknob on his door, which turned ever so quietly. Looking at the other 2 teams, he saw that each had done the same, and each was grinning like Cheshire cats. Holding his left hand up with his teammate poised to rush the door, Higgins held up one finger, then a second finger, and as the third finger was raised, 3 doors crashed open. The operators rushing into each room were on top of the individuals in the beds before they had a chance to reach for a weapon or alert anyone to what was happening. "Privet Mayor," Higgins said in Russian. The Russian looked surprised as hell. Then he looked angry. Replying in his native tongue, he angrily asked, "What is the meaning of this? I am a Soviet citizen. You cannot treat me like this. Who are you?" They could hear a string of profanity in Russian coming from Sergeant Dragunov's room. Higgins smiled as he replied in flawless Russian, "Yes, you are a Soviet citizen and a Soviet major in the Air Defense Force advising these Iraqi soldiers on the radar systems upstairs. Therefore, Major, you are a combatant and will be treated according to the Geneva Convention. Now, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. It is up to you." Almost stunned at the accusation, Alexenko stammered, "Are you Russian?" "You can walk to where we need to go, or we will hog-tie you and carry you up. I would suggest that you walk." "Oh, to answer your question, my grandmother was Russian, but managed to defect to the West," Higgins explained. At this point, the major had placed his boots on and stood. One of the operators zip-tied his hands in front of him so he'd be able to walk. "I will cooperate," the major said in a defeated tone. "Good. Let's move," Higgins said. Pressing his throat, Mike, he transmitted, "Alpha Team, packages are secured. Move to Phase 2. In response, he heard 4 clicks, indicating the team understood and was moving into position. The 3rd click came from the boat team that had departed the Florida when the assault had started. They were now speeding across the water to retrieve the SEALs. The 4th click came from the Night Stalker's Blackhawks, which were now on their way to pick up the Russians, the prized target of the mission. "Dolphin 1, Stalker 2-6, over," Chief Warrant Officer Bob Witzler transmitted. His co-pilot for the mission, Chief Warrant Officer Bob Fladry, was flying the aircraft while Mr. Witzler coordinated the mission. Both were under night vision goggles and only 200 feet above the water, flying at 120 knots. In the back, the crew chief, door gunner, and 2 Special Forces soldiers were prepared to take the prizes aboard. "Stalker 2-6, Dolphin 1, moving to the pad and will be ready in 5 mics, over," Higgins broadcast. "Roger, 5 mics," Witzler responded. As the MH-60 approached the well-lit oil platform, both pilots resumed flight without the use of the night vision goggles. The platform was lit up like a Christmas tree, making the NVGs redundant. As Mr. Fladry made his approach, he could see the 10 SEAL members and 3 other individuals kneeling on the side of the helipad. As the MH-60 gently touched down, 6 of the SEALs grabbed the 3 individuals and half ran and half dragged them to the aircraft. The human packages were shoved into the birds before the SEALs moved back to the edges of the platform. Their part of the mission was now over. The 2 Special Forces soldiers on the birds got the prisoners situated in their 5-point harnesses. Once they were ready, they gave the pilots the thumbs up. They were ready to get out of Dodge. Seeing the soldiers in the back giving him a thumbs up, Mr. Witzler called out to his partner, "I got it." "You have the aircraft," Fladry responded. With that, the MH-60 quickly started to move forward and dove off the side of the oil platform. The 3 passengers were convinced in that moment they were going to die until Mr. Whitzler pulled in more power and resumed his 200-foot altitude. He then turned to the darkened coast to the northeast, passing between Fudga and Buka, Oman. From that point, they would fly southeast to Haifa and out over the Gulf of Oman to a waiting refueling C-130. Their final destination was a secure location outside of Sohar, where they would deliver the prizes. It was a long night of flying. As the MH-60 lifted off, the 10 SEALs made their way to a set of stairs on the side of the oil platform. As they left, the explosives left behind in the mill vans and around the radar systems were set to blow in minutes. "Let's get everyone below and off this thing, Chief," Higgins said to his senior chief and executive officer for this mission. "Be sure we have a good head count. I don't want to somehow miss someone before the explosives blow." As SEALs loaded into their boats for the ride back to the Florida, the explosives they left behind lit up the sky. The enemy's early warning system was officially down. Mission accomplished.
Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss another video.
In the meantime, we have plenty of reading material to keep you busy. You can find it all on our website, frontlinepublishinginc.com.